Welcome back to another video here on the channel. My name is Tommy Clark. I'm a nutrition coach, and today we're going to be going over how to gain muscle mass for basketball. So this has to be one of the most common questions I get asked as a nutrition coach for athletes and for basketball players specifically, because as hoopers, we tend to be taller, skinnier, lankier, and it tends to be more of a struggle for us to actually put on meaningful muscle mass because we're burning so many calories throughout the day. So I wanted to put together this video. And although it may seem difficult, there's actually 4 simple steps to building muscle effectively as a basketball player. So definitely make sure you stick around to the end of the video, and I'll share some more free resources for you at the end to kind of help you get going even more in the right direction. And as always, if you enjoy the video, if you find value out of this, definitely be sure to drop a like and subscribe for new videos every single Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday with nutrition tips to help you take your athletic performance on the basketball court to that next level. And I feel like a lot of basketball players are a little misguided when it comes to gaining muscle. They're always looking for what food is gonna help me build muscle? What exercise is gonna be the best for gaining muscle? Am I just doomed to never gain muscle ever because I was born tall and skinny and lanky? And the reality is there is no magical food, there's no magical exercise, and no, you're not doomed to stay skinny forever. And there's, like I said in the intro, there's a very simple 4-step process. And if you take care of these 4 steps, you'll be well on your way to gaining very meaningful, noticeable lean muscle mass. And I think also before we get into the 4 steps, there's also a lot of confusion around like, do basketball players need to gain muscle? And a lot of guys will come to me saying, okay, it's the off season, I wanna put on 20 pounds of muscle. One, unless you're brand new in the weight room, that's gonna be very, very tough to do. You can put on 20 pounds, but those 20 pounds probably aren't gonna be all quality muscle mass. And even if you are new, you're gonna put on muscle mass, obviously, but you're gonna put on a degree of fat mass as well. And if we do things right, you can really minimize the amount of fat that you gain, and we'll talk about how to do that in today's video. But I think a lot of guys think they need to put on more weight than they actually do. Our goal for you as a basketball player, not a bodybuilder, a basketball player, is to perform to the best of your ability. So you don't necessarily need to put on that much weight. You just need to fuel properly to be stronger and create that strength adaptation that will serve you well on the court. Now, there's some rationale behind gaining muscle, just from a confidence standpoint. Also, it's gonna help you perform better for the most part if you go about this responsibly. So definitely not something we wanna overlook or ignore and say, oh, basketball players shouldn't gain muscle. We just wanna go about it in the right way, and we'll go over how to do that in today's video. Now, first things first, you gotta be eating enough calories. I feel like I've said this in almost every single video I've posted about nutrition, but a lot of achieving nutrition goals for basketball players, whether it's gaining muscle, athletic performance, comes down to eating enough calories. And to gain muscle specifically, you're gonna wanna be in what's called a calorie surplus. If you're not eating more calories than you're burning, that's what a calorie surplus is. If you're not in a calorie surplus, you are not gonna maximize muscle growth, because you need to give your body the energy and the raw materials to effectively build muscle, because muscle is a very metabolically expensive tissue. It's not the most metabolically expensive, but it's up there. It burns a lot of calories. So your body's not gonna go out of its way to add more muscle tissue and burn more calories if there's not enough food coming in. It just wouldn't make sense from a survival perspective. I covered this in the shorter video I did going over why a calorie surplus is so important for muscle growth. But that's the first thing. As far as the degree of the calorie surplus you're gonna wanna be in, you don't wanna go too crazy with this either. This is where a lot of people go wrong and just start eating anything and everything to get into a calorie surplus, because they hear, oh, to gain muscle, I gotta eat more calories. So they go crazy, go into a 1,000 calorie surplus, and then wonder why they're fat 2 months later. So to avoid that, you want to be in a responsible calorie surplus. Typically, this is about 300 to 500 calories above maintenance. Now, a lot of people that are in the whole lean gaining side of things, like maximizing lean muscle mass without putting on fat mass, will advocate for a very small calorie surplus. The problem with that, like 50 calories, that's what I mean by small. The problem with that is that maintenance is more of a moving target. So if you only go up 50 calories, your body's just gonna burn more calories and it's not gonna do anything. But you need to get kind of out of that comfort zone that your body's in without going too far off the deep end. So A good happy medium there is typically about 300 to 500 calories. That's gonna put you in a good position to give your body the raw materials, the energy it needs to effectively build muscle without going overboard and putting on a bunch of body fat to go with it. So for example, if your maintenance is about 3,500 calories, which is pretty standard for a lot of basketball players out there, you're gonna wanna go up to anywhere between 3,800 to 4,000 calories as that starting point. And also, don't freak out if you go up 500 calories and you don't gain weight or it doesn't look like you've gained muscle. Muscle growth, one, is a very slow process. It's gonna take time. And two, if you go up and you don't gain weight, you can always increase. It's always easier to increase than it is to way overshoot it, realize, oh shit, I gained fat, and then have to dial it back. So it's always gonna be easier to slowly ramp up the calories than to overshoot and have to dial it back. So start with 500, monitor your progress, and if you're still not gaining weight and you're not seeing any difference in the mirror, then go up another 5% of your calories. And if you have any questions about this, just shoot me a DM on Instagram or drop a comment down below. Then now that we've got the calories taken care of, we wanna make sure that you're actually giving your muscles the raw materials that it prefers and that it actually needs to build muscle and getting the process of muscle growth going. So your muscle fibers are made of proteins, and you want to give your body enough protein on a daily basis to make sure that you're, one, stimulating muscle protein synthesis, so actually getting the process going. And then once the process is going, the building blocks from the protein, so the amino acids from the protein, are the building blocks your muscles use to get bigger and actually build. So again, protein gets the process going, and it also provides you with the building blocks literally to grow. So you wanna make sure you're eating enough. With that being said, you don't need to go crazy with protein intake either. It's another common misconception. More protein equals more muscle growth. That's true to an extent. What I recommend is 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight every single day. So I'm 200 pounds roughly, I'd be eating about 200 grams of protein per day. Now, 1 gram per pound is not a set in stone recommendation, it's more of a range. So the actual range is anywhere between 0.8 to 1.2 grams per pound of body weight. But to keep it simple, easy to remember, and just to make sure that you're eating enough, 1 gram per pound is usually the recommendation that I give to all my pro athletes that I work with. And again, protein is gonna typically come from animal sources like meat, poultry, seafood, things like that, as well as plant-based sources like tofu, tempeh, plant-based protein powders, legumes, beans, things of that nature. I'll link a grocery list down below just in case you want any suggestions. The pro tip with the protein is spread it out pretty evenly throughout the day. There's some research to suggest that 3 to 5 servings of protein throughout the day is gonna help maximize muscle protein synthesis, because at a certain point, if you stimulate muscle protein synthesis, eating more protein isn't necessarily gonna stimulate it even more. It's not gonna go to waste, your body's gonna use it, it's just not gonna stimulate muscle protein synthesis to the degree that we'd want. Now, there's some flaws to this research and its actual applicability in real life. So take this with a grain of salt, but I'd rather be on the safe side, and typically it's a good idea to have protein with every meal anyway, so just something to consider. And then like I said in my protein powder video, protein powder can be a good way to make sure you're meeting your protein needs if you're struggling with that. Go watch that for some recommendations, how to pick the right one, and I'll link that either up here. I don't think I can link that up in the show notes or whatever this is on YouTube. I mean, I'm new to YouTube, so I don't know what's going on up here, but I'll link it down in the description below so you can check that video out as well and kind of get an idea of what protein powder is going to work well for you. All right, so now that we got protein down, we want to look at the other 3 macros, or the other 2 macros. There's 3 total macros: proteins, carbs, and fats. So we have protein down. You don't want to neglect carbs and fats. I'm not going to go too in depth here because that would just lead this video to be like an hour long. If you want some more resources with that, I'll link them below. In general, you don't want to avoid those either, or you don't want to neglect those nutrients, because even though protein gets all the fame when it comes to muscle growth because it stimulates muscle protein synthesis, carbs especially, and also fat, is going to be very important for muscle growth too, because fat is the precursor for testosterone, which we know is very important for muscle growth. And then carbs are going to fuel your training. And one of the biggest drivers of muscle growth is volume in the gym. So your ability to lift heavy weights and actually do work in the gym is going to be fueled primarily by carbohydrates. So we don't want to neglect the other 2 macros as well. So that's step 3 here. So we got calories first, then protein. Once you've got those dialed in, you're going to want to dial in the other 2 macros. Don't forget about those. And that's going to make sure your whole nutrition plan is balanced. And honestly, if you just take these 3 things and run with it, that'll put you in a really, really good place. So again, you don't want to neglect those other 2 macros. I see a lot of people really go heavy on the protein and forget about carbs, or even worse, think carbs are bad for them. And that's just not true, especially as a basketball player, but even just for general population people. Carbs are going to help you fuel your training if you're doing weight training in the gym, and especially as a hooper with your skills training, conditioning, weight room, all that stuff you're doing at a high intensity going to be fueled primarily by carbohydrates. And then the last thing I want to share with you is just the idea of optimizing recovery. So again, this subject in and of itself could be multiple YouTube videos, multiple podcasts. I'm sure I have multiple podcasts up about this subject already, but optimizing recovery is going to be super important. A lot of basketball players will just work super, super, super hard. And that's great. I admire that. I was that player. And that's super important. That's definitely not a bad thing. But in order to maximize muscle growth, in order to maximize really any sort of training adaptation that you hope to create, muscle growth, fat loss, strength, explosiveness, speed, anything you're trying to do as a hooper, you need to recover. Remember this equation. Stress plus recovery equals adaptation. Adaptation is the change we're trying to create. So the muscle gain, fat loss, speed, what I just went over. Recovery, obviously recovering. So taking days off, getting enough sleep, things of that nature. Stress, training falls under stress. It's a good stress, you need it, absolutely. I'm not telling you not to train. I'm just telling you to train responsibly and fuel your training right using the other 3 principles, and also understanding it's okay to take an off day. It's okay to take a week off sometimes. You definitely need to get enough sleep. Like, dude, if you're not getting enough sleep, you're not maximizing any of this stuff. You could just take all the stuff we just went over, throw it out, because you're not maximizing any of it if you're not sleeping at least 7 to 9 hours per night. There was a study that came out, no joke, that basketball players that went from sleeping 6 hours a night on average to 8 hours a night on average improved their 3-point percentage by 9.2%. And I know you guys watching this are hoopers, so you know 9.2% from 3 is a drastic increase. To the average person, that might sound like, yeah, it's fine, 9.2%, nothing crazy. But you know, you're a basketball player. 9.2% from 3 is a massive jump. And that's just from sleeping. And this was done on Stanford basketball players, so Division I basketball players, high-level guys. So if they're doing that, if they saw that improvement, imagine how much improvement you could see. So don't minimize this. I could do multiple podcasts, multiple videos on sleep alone and the overarching concept of recovery. I've ran myself into the ground multiple times training. I do it now still, growing the business, growing the YouTube channel, stuff like that. So I really urge you, don't overlook recovery. Oftentimes, recovery is the hardest part. The stuff we talked about before, that's pretty straightforward. You'll probably walk away from this video and be able to do that very easily. You're gonna train super hard. You're gonna hit hard in the gym or at home right now because we're all stuck at home. But you're gonna train super hard. What I need you to really focus on is recovering properly and actually taking this side of things seriously. I promise you, this is the missing link. This is what you need to do. And if you're not doing it right now, take at least 1 day off per week. Probably not more than 1 day because you want to be training pretty often and training hard. But in order to keep yourself in a position to train often, you need to recover. So take 1 off day per week, get 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night, really focus on recovery. Also, a facet of recovery is the nutrition, so the other stuff we talked about, so that kind of feeds into recovery. But long story short, those are the 4 steps that I want you to go through in terms of building muscle. If you do these 4 things in sequence, so calories, protein, other macros, recovery, sleep, things like that, you're gonna be in an awesome position to really maximize muscle growth as a basketball player, and you'll be surprised how much progress you can make. So definitely be sure to drop a like down below. If you haven't already, subscribe for new videos every single Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday with nutrition tips for you to take your athletic performance to that next level. As always, really appreciate you tuning in. There's also some other free resources linked down below in the description if you're interested in those. And yeah, thanks for tuning in. I will see you in the next video.